I would like to hand over to our district governor, Mortu, to make an introduction. Jane, over to you. Thank you.
Lost it.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you to Luton Someries, the club, for putting this event on. And I think, as you said, this is Black History Month, and Rotary, with all it stands for in terms of our values, this is absolutely an area where we should be involved, participating and fighting to bring about fairness. Our values are all about, we talk about, is it the truth? Is it fair? Will it bring about friendship? Will it be beneficial? Those are the things that Rotarians are all about. So how come in this world that when you look at the stories behind Black History Month, we realise that the world, and I'm you'd hope it wasn't people in this room, but the world is not a fair place, and it's particularly not a fair place for people who are Black and other ethnic minorities. So I would freely admit that I've been on, I think they call it a journey if you're talking about these things. When I was a little girl, I was at school with people from all over the world, and I had no sense of that they were different. And then gradually, and this was in the 60s and 70s, these prejudices, they seep in, and it's taken me a long time, and I know I'm not there yet. So I think it's just wonderful to be hearing about Black History Month, and it's who better to tell us about sort of the state of the nation than Britain's first Black police and crime commissioner. So I think I would just really, I'm a very meager warm-up act, Festus, but I'm here to do my best for you. But really, they're all waiting to hear from you. So if you'd like to tell us, what we should be knowing, what we should be hearing, and what we should be doing, I've got a very, very warm welcome to Festus Akinbusoye, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Jane. I appreciate the very warm welcome and the warm introduction as well. I think you've been somewhat generous about how eager everyone is to hear me speak. I mean, it's evening time. It's a wintry, dark outside. I think people just want to go to sleep or have a cup of coffee or some nice wine or something to just relax rather than listen to me talk. But well, I've been asked to speak. I accepted the invitation, so you have to put up with me. So that's how it goes. And when you have a treasurer who's very keen to hang on to the money as well, you're doing something right. So that's a very, very good sign of a good treasurer. So well done you. Well, look, what I want to do in the few minutes that I have with you is to perhaps take you on a journey. And hopefully, by the time we get to the end of this journey in a very, very short period of time, you would hopefully appreciate that, in my view, things are not really as bad as we sometimes say they are, but the little that is still bad is very bad. And there are things that can be fixed. It's just a matter of priorities. And I've learned that in this role as Police and Crime Commissioner, that things happen because people will them to happen. Things don't happen by chance in societies, in businesses, in institutions. Very rarely does progress happen just by chance. It almost always happens as a result of a concerted, conscious, deliberate decision to make it happen. And then once that has happened, once that decision has been made, energies and resources are plowed into that, and voila, magic, it happens. So I'll tell you a story of a young boy. His father was a politician in Nigeria. There was an election, the one, and then there was a chap called General Sani Abacha, who came into power, a military dictator, and overruled all the elections and imposed at every single tier of government, military, governors, even at the local government level, every tier of government was run by a military personnel. And that, of course, meant that all elections were annulled. And so that boy's father had to find something else to do, having won election, re-election that particular that time. And there was the prospect of this man traveling to England, where he had business associates who were white. And they had been doing business before he went into politics with those people. And yeah, so he came to England. And he settled in a part of London where there were many other Black people from Nigeria, East London in particular. And that boy and the rest of the family stayed in Nigeria. The father missed his children, well, the youngest of 6 children. They were twins, by the way. And he wanted them to come to England to join him, for a visit. So father comes to England as an economic migrant, and also to kind of get away from the chaos that was in Nigeria at the time. He found a comfortable place, as it seemed, anyway, in England. So mother and the twin children came to England to visit the father. When it was time for the children to go back to Nigeria, father couldn't bear the thought of being separated from his children any further. And he begged mother to allow at least the 2 of the other children to stay with him. And mother reluctantly agreed. Mother went back to Nigeria to carry on dealing with the family business by herself. Effectively, father found 2 children in his hands. He had to sort out the school for them to go to. Housing became quite congested because father was living in a 2-bedroom flat on top of a factory, on top of a textiles factory, shared with another family of 4. So in total, there were 8 people living in a 2-bedroom flat above a textile factory. Now, this for the twin kids, this was not a very fantastic life because they were used to living in a 10-bedroom house. In Nigeria, they had a housemaid, they had a driver that drove them to private schools. They were very much a middle-class family. I mean, one of those twins often talks about never having washed a dish in his life before he came to England. Because everything was done. You just go to school and your parents did well, and you just had everything. Now he's in England with his twin sister. Dad had a job as a cleaner, which was a surprise to him, because the thought of this guy being a cleaner in Nigeria was totally unheard of. I mean, he had people cleaning for him. Now he's cleaning for the people. But suddenly the socioeconomic ladder in England, he found to be very different to Nigeria. So he had to start right at the very bottom. And so when this extra mouth turned up that he needed to feed, he had to get another cleaning job, because one job as a cleaner was not going to generate enough income to feed the whole family and send money back home as well to pay for school fees. And then before he knew it, in no time, a 3rd cleaning job had to ensue. So this boy remembers one day, this was about 5 years after they'd been in England. Father comes home, guess what? I've got a job. Oh, great. What's the job, Dad? Well, that new McDonald's that's opening up in Canning Town? Oh, great. Are you going to be a manager there, Dad? No, I'm going to be the night cleaner, and I'm going to be the first cleaner. at that McDonald's. Of course, for a 16-year-old boy, you do not want to go to school to tell your dad tell your friends that your dad is a cleaner at McDonald's. But so he didn't tell anyone because that was a family secret. But that was what father did to put food on the table, to pay the bills, to send money home to family back home. But the one thing that the father always did, even though he pretty much worked around the clock to provide for his family, he always made time for a couple of things. One was for church, and the second was for parents' evening at school. Because education, as far as he was concerned, was non-negotiable. There's no discussion about that. This boy loved to play sports. His entire life was sports, and he played basketball. That was what he did. Father didn't care about that. He never came to any of the basketball games that he played, never came to any of that, but he never missed parents' evening because he wanted to set an example and make sure that because in his view, the best things that Britain had to offer his family was the opportunity for economic improvement and education. That was it. He hated the food, he hated the weather, and I don't think he quite enjoyed the lack of friendship that Londoners exhibited every now and again. But he didn't care about that. For him, it was all about the opportunity for social mobility and the opportunity and the role that a good education can provide. And fast forward about another 10 years, this boy went to university, did his GCSEs, failed his A-levels, but hey, he kind of found a way to wing his way through clearance, going to university and then passed his his degree. And then he moved out of the house because he wanted to be a big man and he felt he was a big man and, he wanted other things. So he thought it was quite easy to get an accommodation. So he left the house, went to Milton Keynes, and suddenly he found himself pretty much homeless. And he goes to the YMCA in Milton Keynes. And the only place they had was a very, very tiny box room. And you couldn't even fit, he didn't have any money to buy a bed. So he slept on the floor of that YMCA for a couple of weeks or two before he could get some money to buy some furniture. But as luck would have it, he had made some friends who ran businesses, and he started to run a business himself. And he started a security company, had about 3 people working in the company at the time. And he always tells people this story of how he got a first contract with a cinema in London, and he went to a bank in the city of London because he's very aspirational, I mean, the sky's the limit, everything is possible, right? That's just him. You find a way. Goes to a high street bank in London on Threadneedle Street. He still remembers the name of that bank as well. And he goes to the bank manager and said, look, I've got this contract. Here's the business business plan. Everything's all worked out. The company's going to make money. He needs about £3,000 to start up the business. And the bank manager told this young man, where do you live? I gave him the address. Obviously, he was in East London, Canning Town, not too far from Threadneedle Street. And the bank manager told him that we don't do business with people from your area. That was exactly what the bank manager said. So the boy walked out, had to go and lick his wounds for, the ego was a little bit damaged. But again, the determination, the perseverance, the can-do attitude that he inherited from his family, from his parents, made him to start looking for organizations that will fund the business to start up. Then he came across the Prince's Trust. And the Prince's Trust saw the business plan. They liked the guy. He's a charming guy, just a great, great, great guy. It hasn't changed much. And the Prince's Trust gave him the money, and apparently that was the first business plan they had seen that the entirety of all the panelists approved to fund, because it was basically everything was ready to go. Everything was ready to go. That business grew from employing 3 people to now employing about 50 people. And ironically, that same bank that turned out this young man somehow 3 years later wrote to him, offering him about £100,000. He threw the letter in the bin. I mean, as it happened, that boy was me, if you hadn't guessed. But I think what I want to just get across is that I'm in a very, very fortunate situation now. You know, I was able to take advantage of the very best, in my view, that Britain has to offer. And I think sometimes we put ourselves down too much. We talk a lot about what we are not doing as a country. We talk a lot about what is bad and what is ugly and what is, the divides in our society. And I just think that we do not spend enough time looking at the story of each life, regardless of the skin color, and say, look, you know what? We've got Muhammad in the room here, in this audience here. 50 years ago, you would not have been in this audience in the capacity that you're in. 50 years ago, I could never be in the position that I'm in now. We have many women in this group. 50 years ago, you probably would not, I'm not even probably, definitely, you will not be where you are now in the capacity that you are. Now, all of these changes did not happen by accident. As a nation, at one point we said, enough is enough. That is not acceptable. There should be no reason why Muhammad, someone called Muhammad, cannot be an academic in an institution in Britain. We decided that. We made that happen as a nation. And it saddens me that unfortunately we have Black children, brown-skinned children, women, young girls in Britain today who, because of past issues, are still being told that, well, that is the way it was and that is the way it still is. So you cannot become this because of that. And I think as adults, sometimes we make the error of reflecting our own battles onto our younger generation, whilst not balancing that with the progress that has been made. Because hope, in my view, hope is probably the single most powerful driver of ambition and success, in my opinion. And when we talk with our young people, and at the time we sort of talk about Black History Month, if we choose to just talk about racism, if we choose to talk about the divisions, if we choose to just talk about the fact that if you're a Black person, you're disproportionately more likely to be stopped in search, if we only talk about the fact that, when you look at academic attainment, even though if you remove the white working class kids, well now the least likely to go to university, actually, if you look at the most of the data, if we just focus on those things, we run the risk of, by default, causing our young people to relive the experiences that we lived when they do not have to do so, despite the several opportunities that surround them today. So I'm not just trying to paint a rosy picture or make us feel wonderful about Britain, even though I believe this is a fantastic country. It really, I genuinely believe that. And I think to our peril, we ignore that fact. We ignore that fact to our peril. But it's okay to talk about the wonderful things about this country, about our county, the progress that we're making, whilst also acknowledging that the life expectancy of a young boy in some parts of Bedfordshire is a lot less, by probably about 4 or 5 years in some cases, just because of where they live. That is unacceptable. So if you start comparing the life expectancy of a young person growing up in Luton, in some parts of Luton, to someone growing in the nicer parts of Bedfordshire, central Bedfordshire, where I live, that has got to trouble you. It's got to trouble you. So that inequality, that is something that disturbs me. You know, when I talk with our chief constable sometimes, and I say, well, look, why is it that, you know, for the last 3-4 years, there's a 10%, almost like a ceiling on the number of our police force that are from a Black, Asian, and minority ethnic background. That number doesn't seem to go up much over the last 3 years. In fact, that number is dropped. Now, I don't claim for 1 second to know the reasons why this happens, but why is that happening? Why? Is it just that Black people don't want to become police officers? I would have thought the people who want to become police officers would be Black and brown people, because they're disproportionately more affected by policing. I mean, if I told you now, everyone, that literally at every single stage of interaction with policing, every single stage, from recruitment to vetting to job offer, to probation, to passing the probation, to becoming an officer, to disciplinary outcomes, to promotions, and to arrest, to use of force, to stop and search, to sectioning, at every single level of police interaction. Would you believe that there are racial disparities at every single one of these? Would you believe that? Every single one of those levels, there is a disproportionality. So I'm not saying that the police is like institutionally racist. I'm not saying that they're not. I'm not one to throw those kind of, I don't really care about those labels. I just care about observations and asking, why is that? You know, why is it that we've got almost a 50-50 split in our population of men and women, but the number of, so we've got almost about 40% of our workforce are women, but how many of those would you see as sergeants or as inspectors or chief inspectors or superintendents? Very few. I think in the history of Bedfordshire Police, I think we've only ever had one female chief constable. So when you look at all these things, now some people can ask, well, what's the point of that? You just got the best person for the job. That is it. And you're right. But my question back to you will be, how do you know you're not missing out on someone who is better? And if you can demonstrate to me that the system is fair enough to always guarantee that only the very best get the job and get to the top, then I'm relaxed about that. But unless you can demonstrate to me that the system always allows the best, as opposed to the best connected, as opposed to the people who, well, basically the best connected, then we have work to do. So there's so many other areas where I think we can do better. I feel very, very concerned, for example, about the fact that if you come from a wealthy family, your likelihood of getting the top jobs in society is still much greater. If you went to Oxford or Cambridge, the likelihood of you becoming a judge is far higher. If you look at our criminal justice system, if you look at all of the justices, if you look at their backgrounds, you know, the white boys that I grew up with in Canning Town, they've got no chance. Not a Scooby, right? So it's not even, so for me, the biggest divide in Britain today is not even race, it's wealth. But sometimes race and gender aligns with wealth, and the inequalities then become that much more pronounced. But that said, I feel so proud to be British. I feel so proud of my African heritage as well. I cherish that. I am very proud of that. I speak about that. I feel grateful, you know, that this country welcomed my dad. He's passed away now. He's a man that I love dearly and I miss extremely. But to see how opportunities were provided for him to allow to get his children over here, and how we were able to benefit from the fantastic education system that this country has. I honestly, guys, okay, I'm going to stop talking in a few seconds. We complain about a lot. We complain about so much in this country when we don't really appreciate what we've got. We've got so many wonderful things in with some of the education, you know, institution we've got here. They're brilliant. But anyway, what I'm going to just say is that that's been the journey of me, and now to be in this role as a police and crime commissioner, as somebody who's had his, you know, fair share of encounters with the police. Never did anything wrong, by the way, just so you know. You know, I just have to put that on record. I never did anything, anything. So I've had my fair share of stop and search, and those were never pleasant experiences. But I'm now in this situation where I'm trying to support our police officers who do a marvelous job. And I have just finished just talking about the Sarah Everard thing. For those of you who know much about what I do and what I stand for, I have absolutely zero tolerance for any kind of hate. I have zero tolerance for any kind of prejudice or discrimination or any kind of isms, you know, whether it's on political grounds or gender or race or religion. I just can't stand it. I just can't stand it. So the fact that Sarah was killed because she was a woman is a thing that must disturb all of us, not just women. And if you go into his track record of the things that he has done in the past and the misogyny, and you know, I was speaking with the Home Secretary 2 days ago. I was in Manchester, and she was sharing with us some of, obviously, I can't go into any details, hence the reason why she's got an inquiry going on, because there've been a lot of things that came to light, you know, through her discussion with Cressida Dick in the Met. And this guy should never, ever have been a police officer, without a question. And even when he became a police officer, he should have been outed a long time ago and should have been sent packing. This guy was a very dangerous man. So what really angers me about the whole situation was that this man used something that was so unique to him as an officer and abused that. Because there are two things that this country, in my view, has for all of us in a free society, and that is you know, that we enjoy: life and liberty. Now, a police officer is probably the only role that can legitimately take those two things away from you, unlike any other profession. Very few people can take a life legitimately in this country as part of their job and have a reason, justify a reason to do so. And very few people can take your liberty away from you justifiably and have a reason to do so. Police officers have that power. And this man abused that power in extremis. And so you can imagine how so many police officers feel right now. Morale is absolutely shot to the ground. Absolutely shot to the ground. So a lot of my work now is talking with the chief constable, saying, look, you know, what system do we have in place? how are we dealing with any such individuals in our force? You're going to be hearing some stuff in the news over the next couple of weeks. That's all I'm going to say. But as a starting point, he has gone back and reviewed about 117 cases of indecent exposure to see how those were handled, whether by an officer or by a member of the public, because I will not allow this to happen on my watch. And so there will be some stuff that will be coming out in the news in the next week. I can't prejudge anything, but suffice to say, if we have to have a clean out, then we will do so. But I insist on having a police force that is responsive to the needs of our public, and that commands the support and the confidence of residents as well. So I will keep quiet now, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to do so. Otherwise, I could talk for England and Nigeria combined, and that is dangerous.
Over to you, Mohammed.
Thank you, Jane. What a fantastic speech that was. When I spoke to Festus PA Gemma McCormack, we're organizing this evening speech, and I told Gemma I really like Festus to talk about the Black History Month, because that's really the purpose, one key purpose of this evening discussion. And she said to me, "Don't worry about it, Mohammed. Festus will talk about it. Don't worry. He has the skills to talk about anything you want him to talk about." And she was absolutely right. That was really inspirational talk. Thank you for that, Festus. And of course, Jane will extend the vote of thanks at some point after we finish the Q&A session. I hope your time permits, Festus, to have some 10 minutes or so Q&A,
sure,
because I know that you're a bit tight in time. If I may start maybe with a question from my end, and for the audience, if you could maybe just raise your hand, use the hand function if you have a question, or post it on the chat box, and we will take it from there. But I have the first question I have, Festus, if I may. Obviously, you talked about the Black History Month, the value of the Black History Month, and proud to be, because that's a theme of Black History Month this year, proud to be, of course, Black and British is really important. We actually had this afternoon a public lecture at the local university with Professor David Olosoga. He's a historian from the University of Manchester, and he was talking about, being Black and British, and how amazing this diversity and the strength and the value that this brings to this lovely nation. My question to you is, we want to know, at what stage of Festus' career did you face the biggest challenge and barriers as a Black professional in the policing sector? Do you face those same challenges, or have they changed?
Okay, well, if I answer the last part first, the answer that I'll give to you is that I don't really care. I am blessed, I think, probably because my parents instilled a sense of self-confidence in me, that what other people think about me is really none of my business. If that's their problem. If they choose to see me as less because of the color of my skin, they will soon be proven wrong, as I've had to do multiple times in my life. And honestly, it just doesn't bother me at all anymore. Does it happen? It probably does. I just don't see it. Or maybe I choose not to see it. Or I choose to do what I need to do despite the existence of that. That is just my attitude. And that is what I try to imbibe, that I try to inculcate into my children as well, that no matter what, whether you're a woman, whether you've got gray hair, whether you've got no hair, whether you're tall or short, or a woman or a man, or you're white, there will always be something that somebody will pick on as a reason why you cannot do so, or you're too old, or you're too young. Somebody will always have something to pick on. That's just human nature, right? So my message to anyone is, if you want to do something, go the hell ahead and do it, because chances are someone's going to pick on something, right? So that's my attitude about if I still experience that. I did have some racist remarks passed my way during the election campaign. I had some really horrific one where someone got into one of my public meetings and started, they had a swastika and they they had the thing about George Floyd and, the only good black person is a dead black, they used the N-word in the meeting. And I'll only vote for you as commissioner if you agree with, killing, like doing a George Floyd, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, but you know what? I was back the following day, knocking on doors, talking with people because that's just that. But is it okay? Of course not. Do I still remember it? Of course I still do. But my attitude in life, if I'm honest with you, Mohammed, is to just let those things, get off my shoulder and not let it disturb me. But I will tell you just two cases where I have experienced, some people will call it racism, but for me, racism is a thing just like sexism and whatever it is, you have to choose how you react to that. So while society tries to fix things, you have to choose how you decide to react to that. So I talked to you about, I had friends who had businesses before I started mine. And one of them is a white guy, because I used to live up in Yorkshire. Yes, I near Ilkley, by the way, Ilkley Moor. And I'm addicted to Yorkshire pudding, by the way, just so you know. Ice cream and Yorkshire pudding, that's my thing. They do not quite go together. I haven't quite tried them both yet, but maybe I might put some ice cream and Yorkshire pudding actually and see how that goes. But hey, and but anyway, so this guy, when I was about to start the business, said to me, Festus, with a name like yours, very typically, foreign name, maybe no one's going to give you any contract. So what I can do, and the guy meant well. He said to me, what if I front for you? So I do the business cards, I put my name, his name was Richard, and I can just help you get through the door. And then once the doors open for the business, then you can then take over from there. And I think I was about 23 years old at the time. And I said to him, I said, Richard, if no one's going to give me a contract just because of my name, they can shove the contract and I won't finish the rest. 5 years later, I didn't have to worry about that. I'm where I am now. So there was that. Then there was obviously the issue with the stop and searches, which, I've had about 6 of those happen to me. It's never a pleasant experience. I know people talk a lot about, well, if you've got nothing to hide, then, what you've got to do with what's the problem with stop and search? I have no issues with stop and search. It has to be done. I've done it as a special constable with Bedfordshire Police. But I can tell you that these are not very pleasant experiences. Even if the officer is as polite as they can be, it's done in a public place. Everybody's watching you being stopped and searched. People are walking past and they're going to be thinking, well, there's no smoke without fire and all that kind of stuff. And in one case, when I was stopped by an officer, I then asked, why have you stopped me, officer? And his exact words to me were, just to make sure you're not one of London's most wanted. That was it. Now, nothing was found on me. On a second occasion, when I was stopped by another officer, I was driving I drive BMW. I like BMWs. That's my thing. That's no sin, is it, right, to drive a BMW? Many people drive BMW. It's one of the most bought cars in Britain. But I drive one, and I was driving through another very pleasant part of Milton Keynes, and I drove past 2 unmarked police cars. When I parked in front of this person's house that I was going to, again, not a very nice area, one unmarked police car parked behind me, another one parked right next to my car. So I was basically boxed in. And the officer come out of the car, plain clothes, knocked on my window and said to me, he told me to wind down and I refused because I didn't know who he was. So then he showed me his warrant card. Okay, there's a police officer. I was just totally, panicked because it's not every day you get boxed in like that. And I wound my window down and the first thing he said to me is, what are you doing here? Now, it's a free country, right? Why do I have to justify to you why I'm here? Eventually, then they asked me, well, is this your car? Is it insured? He walked around, did his checks, and he said, well, thank you very much, sir. And then he went off. Now, obviously, nothing was ever found on me. I've never been in trouble with the police ever in my life. Now, just imagine if this happens to you again and again and again and again, how that would help you feel any more confident in the police. You know, after a while, I start to feel like a bit of you know, you're being harassed, right? But I didn't ever feel that. So I'm now talking with people about stop and search and encouraging them to comply and to be cooperative. But look, you know, there are still issues. You know, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But, you know, my attitude always is take a positive approach to things in life. If you want to achieve something, there would always be some kind of obstacle or the other. It doesn't have to stop you. That's just my attitude. Boring, I know, but it's just me.
Thank you, Festus. And by the way, I drive BMW. There is nothing wrong with that. I assure
Great,
you.
you know, great minds, great minds, great minds.
Thank you.
Obviously, obviously.
So there is a question on the chat, and we have also a hand up. So I'll probably take the hand up first, and then read the question from the chat box. Miles, can you please unmute yourself, and over to you. Thank you.
A fascinating story. My question will be, in fact, to do with very parochial and not personal, but very parochial point. But firstly, I asked a black friend of mine in Silso about Black Lives Matter, because I'm ex-army. I was 25 years in the army, and frankly, I know it sounds really weird, but I never ever encountered racism in the army. Never once in the army. Okay, I left 30 years ago. It may have changed, but when for my 25 years in the army, I never encountered it. So I asked this pal of mine, what is it about, you know, Black Lives Matter, and what's your personal experience? And he said, well, frankly, in England, he believes it's class. He says, nothing to do with colour, it's class. Picking up your point, Festus, about the experience in the East End. And he said, but I went to America. And he said, oh boy. So I'm just qualifying why I want to ask a parochial question. And it's very specific. It's to do with yours and the Chief Constable's commitment to introduce special constables or constables, community constables, into community areas. We in Silso have had a dramatic increase in antisocial behaviour and vandalism, and we're a small village growing fast, perhaps faster than we planned. But anyhow, we have this problem, and really, I know you're committed to it, but I'd be very interested to know about some timescales. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. On the issue of contrasting with Britain to America, I try not to do this too much, because sometimes it makes us have a false sense of security. But of course, the culture, the underpinning culture of Britain and the US in terms of how we approach law and order is very, very different. Very, very different. So it will be, I wouldn't want to compare, but you are right. The racial divide in the US is much more stark, but it doesn't mean that we don't have that here. And yes, the wealth thing is also an issue. The class thing is also an issue, but that's a historical thing in Britain, which also has a racial tone to the class structure. But we can go into the historicity of of this kind of social constructs and divisions that we have, and how there's kind of like a the cross sectionality of these kind of different phenomena. But and on the issue of the local policing, October last year there were 51 officers in the community policing team. Now we have got 67. That is the highest we've ever had. On top of that, you've got about 12 sergeants, I think about 6 inspectors, and 3 chief inspectors, and obviously you have the superintendent, and the chief superintendent oversees that community policing team. This is the most we've ever had in terms of our establishment for community police officers. And I'm proud that, I made this a campaign priority, because in my view, we have got to shift policing in Bedfordshire from a response-led approach to a proactive prevention style of policing. We're still going to have our response officers who do a lot of the knocking in doors, and not knocking in doors, but breaking down doors, who are going to be, chasing the gangs, the gun-toting idiots. But I want to see policing being visible in our communities, in our villages, in our rural communities. So the community police officers now, that's now in place, by the way. That is now in place. And I believe two Sundays ago, there was a mobile patrol van in Silso. Were you aware of that?
Oh, I wasn't. I was away then.
All right. Well, this is what always happens. When the officers turn up, the people who want to see them are not there. So now I've asked them to send me a picture of wherever they go, or to put it on social media so people can see that they were actually there. So just yesterday we had a meeting with I had an annual meeting with all the town and parish councillors, and some of the issues in Silso in terms of reported crime was discussed. So that they're aware of that. And just so you know, everyone, don't tell anyone, by the way, next month, the key policing focus will be on antisocial behavior. So expect to see some serious intervention by the force around antisocial behavior. Now, again, these are all things happening because of a deliberate, intentional focus on these areas of our business. So community policing, that's one. So we've got that happening. I pledge that we're going to do that. It's happening. Antisocial behavior, that's going to be happening. The one that I'm still waiting to happen is some action on fly tipping. I have a thing about fly tipping, by the way. Some of you might have noticed that my campaign pledge was to crush the vehicles used for fly tipping. And I've had some members of the public write to me saying, well, Commissioner, when are you going to start crushing these vehicles? And when you're doing so, can you please crush the fly tippers with the fly tip vehicles? Now, I had to respond politely to these individuals that I don't actually want to end up in prison for murder or manslaughter. So either way, I have no plans whatsoever to crush individuals with the vehicles used for fly tipping. I only just want to crush the vehicles to send a message that if they want to fly tip, they can go somewhere else. Maybe Hertfordshire or something. They've got lots of money up there. But certainly not in Bedfordshire. We don't want that. The Police and Crime Commissioner, who's a good friend of mine, in David Lloyd in Hertfordshire, he doesn't like it when I say that. But I'm like, you guys are better resourced than we are in Bedfordshire, so they can go somewhere else. But I don't want them fly tipping here.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Festus.
All right, thank you, Festus. Cheers.
We have two more questions. So one question from Penelope is coming, and I have another question. Just if I may read this question from David Young and take your views on it, Festus. He's asking validly, how can society change how some groups are dominated by groups by the male, for example, armed forces, police, garage mechanics, the female side, nursing, caring, junior, teaching class, law, medicine, banking. How, in your view, society can help in changing how these groups are dominated?
Right. So this is fundamentally a cultural issue. And in my opinion, from running my own business to now being a police and crime commissioner, perhaps the most difficult thing to change in human society is culture. If you look at, for example, the attempt by policymakers to change the culture within our financial sector, you would have thought that the financial crisis of 2007 and 8 has led to a fundamental change in the way that our financial services operate. I suspect that in another couple of years, we may very well be facing some financial crisis of some kind or the other, because but it probably won't be as bad as the previous one, but it probably will happen again, because the tide of human nature turns ebbs very, 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 very slowly, very, very slowly. But it takes concerted, calculated effort to stem that tide. And the way we do it is starting with you and me, you know, as we will have other men, other women around us. And for me, I just cannot understand why a man would think that just because he's a man, I guess, with the way there's a debate around what is a man and what is a woman, and, you know, but you know what I mean? You know, I just can understand how somebody who is a man considers a woman to be less than them, either intellectually or in terms of their capacity, in terms of their decision-making ability. I just find, I don't get that. I do not understand it. And so as a father to teenage boys and a girl as well, you know, I find myself having to talk to my sons and say, look, there is no, you're no better in any way, shape, or form. You know, you can be whatever you want to be as my son, and your sister can be whatever she wants to be as well. And I genuinely want to see a society where everyone, whether you're black, white, male, female, or whatever you class yourself as, can truly fulfill your potential, whatever you want to achieve in life, you know, without these obstacles being put in the way. So I'm doing what I can, using my position to get that message out there. And that's one of the reasons why, with some of the funding that we've got yesterday through the Safer Streets from the government, as well as doing all the street lighting and the CCTV to keep men and young women and girls safe in parts of our county, where we know there are serious issues. We're also going to be investing some money in a lot of the relationship education training, especially for young people, because I'm sorry to say, the reality is that a lot of our young boys, especially, their understanding of what a healthy relationship looks like is very, very warped. I have seen it. If I told you that some of the latest data that I saw found that we're now seeing a record number of under 18, so basically young children becoming victims of sexual abuse. However, the number of perpetrators of this sexual abuse on young children who are also children is the highest it's ever been. The number has, I think, doubled or trebled in the last 2 years. And those are just the ones that are reported to the police that we've got data of. And what is even more staggering is this, wait for this, the number of those young people who are perpetrators of sexual violence on other young people, the number of those young people who are under the age of 10 years old, under the age of 10, is now the highest it's ever been. So we've got 10-year-olds who are being reported for sexual violence now, and the vast majority of these, by the way, are boys. Now tell me we don't have a problem. So I'm sorry to be being a downer, but I think I've got to give you the reality of where we are. But you know, by having this relationship education, by parents, you know, modeling good, healthy relationships to their children, male and female, that's how we're going to get this done. But it's going to take some time. And the media and social media has got a lot to answer for, a lot to answer for. But look, we all have a part to play in this as grandparents or great-grandparents, as parents, as uncles, and brothers. We all have, this is all part of our job, but I believe we can. And it is happening, by the way. It is happening because stuff that many men would have gotten away with 10 years ago, they would never get away with that today. So things are improving, they're getting better, but it's nowhere near enough.
Okay, Festus, I'm conscious about your time. I have two Rotarians have questions for you. So if I may invite them to bring their question in, and maybe if you provide a short answer, because I know that you have another commitment. So the first one is Penelope, followed by Andy. Penelope, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Festus. This is a question for Luton, but it may extend to wider Bedfordshire. And it's to do with funding. yesterday I was reading an article that said that currently Luton's policing funding is that of a small village. And is it the Home Secretary who's pledged that they will review this by the next general election? Do you sort of have any further insight on that? Because presumably everything that you want to implement requires some form of funding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question that I just have to clarify a little bit. Now, Bedfordshire Police is funded as a whole, as a county. Not there is no specific pot of funding for Luton. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. So we're a police force that is the whole of the county. However, so the whole of Bedfordshire, you are right, is funded as a rural policing area. Even though we have the policing demands of large urban metropolitan cities like London, the Greater Manchester, West Midlands. And I'll give you the scale of the issues that we face. So for example, generally speaking, Bedfordshire is in the top 4 or 5 policing areas when it comes to in the risk to counterterrorism. Bedfordshire, we are number 4 in the nation when it comes to the import and export of county lines. If I told you that there was an operation called Obvenetic, which saw some, I think it was the French and the Dutch authorities hack into an encrypted phone network called EncroChat last year, and it actually opened up a world of drug dealing and organized crime gangs, or OCGs as we call them. And so suddenly Britain featured on this EncroChat system. So we got our data pile from via the NCA, National Crime Agency, from the international agencies, and then each policing area was given their data chunks. Through this data chunk, just one county line that we found on there was dealing drugs, or sorry, was processing about 10 million pounds of cocaine a month in Luton. Just one line. And we've so far only been able to identify about 35 to 40 OCGs. We've been able to take down about 3 or 4. And just one line to take one line down would probably consume, I don't know, probably about 100 police officers in terms of time and effort. So we're nowhere even near dealing with this. So this is the kind of scale of demand that you will have in parts of London, certainly in Greater Manchester and West Midlands. But our funding is as the fund of a rural area. Now the funding formula, which is what you're talking about, Penelope, was put in place about 14 years ago, and it's not really been rebalanced. And the way the funding formula is structured, it is advantageous to big cities. So they look at things like how many pubs and bars and nightclubs you have. Stupid, right? As if crime only happens in the areas where they've got nightclubs. But anyway, but that hasn't been reviewed. So we're having to rely on what we call special grants to plug the gap, because the government recognizes that the demand on our police force compared to the level of resources that we have is that much. So they keep giving us special grants to fill in the gap each year, but we can't plan ahead. And every year we have to apply for these special grants, which we always get. So we say to them, if you're going to keep giving us this special grant, just give us make it part of our core funding. We don't need to keep getting this special grant, and we have to keep applying for this every year. So what the Home Secretary is saying that she will finally do, which no other Home Secretary have ever done before, is actually put a time limit on this, that she will review the funding formula by the next Parliament, which is a good thing, which is a very, very positive thing. But the scale of demand on our police officers and police force is astronomical. And Luton keeps them busy. But in terms of a budget split, Luton probably consumes about 60%, if not more, of Bedfordshire Police's resources easily. And I can say that for a fact. I used to be a special constable. I can tell you a lot of our resources goes into Luton because there are some serious issues there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Festus. And the last question, not least, by Andy. District Governor-elect. Andy, over to you.
Andy's biting his finger because he's not sure if he wants to say what he wants to say, but please go ahead.
No. I was interested in your comment about young people and perpetrators. You may know that I actually run one of the biggest youth centres in the town, but it's interesting about funding. There is lots to work out there for the Freedom Programme and things like this, but trying to get the funding to support those projects and work with those young people is really difficult. I know we've had some PCC money in the past, but that just is a token. And I think if we could work together to bring in that funding, we need to bring the voluntary sector in, the youth sector, we need to bring in the statutory sector to look at that work, because you're right what you're saying, and I agree with some of the figures, but there is help out there, but it's not being channeled, and we're not able to do things because the staffing and all that kind of stuff as well. So that'd be an interesting comment to have. And lastly, I was thinking about healthcare, from the healthcare centres, and the majority, and I can speak perhaps at Hertfordshire University and some of the universities around, actually the majority of the healthcare professionals that are coming through universities are from the Black and Asian communities. So there's a huge upturn in skills in radiography and all those kind of things. Mm-hmm. So things are on the move.
But you know what I would say though is that whilst those numbers are good, how many of them remain in the job 5 years later? So what is the retention like? So within Bedfordshire Police, whilst they talk to me a lot about, oh well, we're getting more people from Black and Asian minority ethnic communities coming to policing, that is wonderful. What I'm more interested in how many stay behind after 2, 3, 4 years. And if the retention is not great, then how are we fixing that? But in terms of the funding, we now have got the funding stream for 2022-23 open. If you're not aware of that, please contact my office and put in a bid. So we're going to be looking for organizations to help deliver programs around how we're safeguarding young women and girls, and also obviously young boys as well. I'm very, very big on diversion and prevention, because I think it's just better to try and stop the fire, prevent the fire in the first place than try to put out the fire after the house is burning down. And ultimately, I want to try and stop the creation of victims. And the best way to do that is to prevent people from becoming a victim in the first place. And that's by tackling things before they happen. So people like yourselves, you're very much valued and needed. So by all means, if you have some funding requests, by all means, you won't be the first, and you definitely won't be the last to ask me for money. Everywhere I go, I get asked for money. And whether it's all, I am more than happy to see what I can do to support a project that is going to deliver for our residents. So I'm relaxed about that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Festus. I'll hand over now to our District Governor, Jane, to say a few words and thanking you. Jane, over to you.
Well, thank you very much. I would just say the people of Bedfordshire are very lucky to have you, Festus. I mean, if I could, I'd capture you and take you back to home to Buckinghamshire with me. But
Matthew Barber is all right. I spoke yesterday.
I haven't met him yet. I've seen him talking, but yeah. I was with you every step of your story, your life story, and how it all played out. And I think actually my husband, who came from the Indian subcontinent, had a similar sort of backstory. But what apparently is evidence, and from the two of you, I can see it in reality, is this extraordinary energy that people that come into this country bring with them, and this really wanting to succeed and give something to the country. So I love the idea of being so black and proud to be British. So so well done you. I thought you had a really clear vision, and the sort of problems that you were highlighting, this business about lack of social mobility and class and culture, it all rings horribly true. I mean, maybe at least we're talking about it in this country, and some countries don't even get that far. So I think you're absolutely on the right way. I love the fact that you were talking about prevention, because I have a background with the CAB and with the health service, and getting people to think prevention is just so much more important.
Yes.
So I absolutely applaud what you're doing there. So any more girlish enthusiasm from this side, I shall calm down now and go and lie down in the darkened room. But thank you very much indeed. It was a really inspirational talk, and I'm glad to know you're there for Bedfordshire, and so well done and thank you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.